Hi guys, what's going on, and welcome back to another video on Conqueror's Blade. So I thought it was time we actually had a look at this new Pike class. I got to check it out a little bit in the PTR but didn't get time to do a video on it, so I really wanted to, now I've actually got it in the live version. Been playing it fully since launch, kind of wanted to see my first impressions, how I've been getting on with it, what I've learned a little bit about some of the combos, and some of the complications and positives and to some extent some of the negatives as well of the class. I guess it goes without saying that there's still a lot more to learn on this class, right? I've been playing it, 2 days now? That is not enough time to realistically come to grips, so this is by no means a guide video, but a lot of you have been asking kind of what are my opinions on the Pike and are we getting a Pike video coming, so I just kind of wanted to give my first thoughts. How's the Pike coming along and how am I getting on with it so far, and is it going to be a weapon that I'm going to continue with? So it works quite differently to any other classes in the game. I guess firstly it's worth perhaps pointing out that obviously if you didn't pre-order it then you could just unlock it through the seasonal challenges. You'll find them in the seasonal menu like you did at Season 3 with them all. You'll find them and you'll just have your sets of challenges to do, and as you work your way through them you basically get different skill unlocks, different ults unlocks and different sets of the skills unlocked. But when you actually get into the class itself, you'll find that unlike, say, a bow where you have a lot of different skills you can choose from, it's effectively all picked for you, and the only one you have any choice over is the ultimate. Because the ultimate has two options, Cold Dragon and Green Dragon. One is effectively a sort of hail of blades, I would describe it as, similar to the Glaive's Hail of Blades, and then this is basically just one big lunging stab, a bit like the spear ability. For me, I've definitely been using Green Dragon. So then, elsewise, you've then got three abilities to make use of. One of them I would describe as primarily an escape skill. It does do a little bit of damage, and actually you can use it to sort of cut through enemy units. There's basically a charging attack. It throws you forwards, you do like a pierce and you follow it up. And then there's a much more sort of AoE attack. Both of these kind of end in CC chains, and you can use them 3 times before cooldown comes on. And that is 3 times out of any of the 3 skills currently available. So for example, you could press 1 Water Dragon, go for that first stab. You could then press a Sky Dragon, go for that little leap. And then you could press a Wandering Dragon to get out. So you can use any 3 in combination, or you could just do 3 Wandering Dragons and go really far back and keep running back and just do a massive escape. Or you could do 3 Water Dragons, or 2 Water Dragons and 1 Sky Dragon. You can use any combination of the 3, and then the set of 3 goes on to cooldown. But they're only going to be going on to cooldown for 3 seconds. It's actually a very, very short cooldown. And that might initially seem absolutely crazy, and to some extent it is, but the damage on this class you're going to find is very much lower than other classes similar. So for example, if you compare it to like a medium armor glaive, we're perhaps talking about half the damage output. So then the cooldowns start to make more sense. Finally, you then obviously get your ultimate. These both also have a 28-second cooldown, so quite a lot shorter than other ultimates. What's the shortest? Maybe 40-45 seconds. So that's quite interesting. The damage actually isn't too bad, and for me, Green Dragon is the ultimate to use. There's not really a lot of anti-hero stuff in this setup, and whilst there is an element of sort of CC in the ending of some of these moves, a lot of them I find to be not tremendously easy to use from a CC point of view. So having something like this Green Dragon where you can send enemies flying and just charge in and get that knockdown is really, really handy to have. Now, we'll kind of come back to the slashing damage and what I think that means in a minute. But once you've used your ultimate, you then get a choice of one of the variations. So once you've used your ultimate, you get a 2 or 3 second window in which you can basically use any of your normal abilities and they get a special bonus. So for example, this one is almost like a little mini poleaxe animation. Although it's actually quite hard to actually get it to land, I find. This one is like a powerful lunge forwards, and then finally you get sort of a mini hail of blades again. So you get an ult, and then you get a half ult in one of these variations. So hopefully that makes sense a little bit about how these classes work, how the skills within it work, and how you get that primary, tertiary, secondary, tertiary, running around, abilities to make use of before you go down to cooldown. Then you get your ultimate, and then you get your ultimate variation, along with everything being on a relatively short cooldown. So now we're just going to quickly cut and have a look at stats in terms of how I've put my point distribution. It's also worth pointing out at this point, I'm just using Blizzard armor for this, since we've now got, I think, 3 sets of it now. I think it's yet again available in the Fame store. And yeah, I just kind of fancied it because you're getting increased piercing and slashing damage, and you're getting plus 15 to all your basic attributes. So of course I'm missing out on the leadership, but I am gaining an increased amount of damage effectively. I've gone 75% of my skill points into agility and then 25% into strength. So why is that? Well, I think the bulk of the damage from this class is in piercing. So that's why I'm trying to get my piercing damage as high as I can. Now, arguably, the strength does give me some piercing armor penetration, which is arguably nice. Although I think at 1955, we're probably starting to get not too high, but more than perhaps we need. So you could perhaps even shift a few more points out of strength into agility. And my slashing damage is still decent, but my slashing armor penetration at 1600 is probably on the lower side. So if you don't have it in agility, then I think that remaining slashing armor penetration is going to be so low that realistically, even if you had the slashing damage, you're going to struggle against anything other than really light units. But I kind of want you to hold that thought about slashing and piercing armor penetration and damage, because if we go back to the skills, then a few of them to me don't quite make sense. For example, Green Dragon, very much a lunge, and yet that seems to be classed as slashing damage. Yet, if you look at the translation over on Frontier, this is listed as piercing damage, and in my opinion, this is a mistranslation, probably one we'll see get corrected at some point, and I think this is in reality piercing damage. And that kind of changes things up a little bit. I often follow it up with the lunging charge, so that's also piercing damage. And probably my primary ability is Water Dragon, which scales off piercing damage. Okay, there is some element of slashing damage in the escape skill, but realistically I'm not using that much in an offensive capability, so I'm not too worried about that. And then we get a little bit of blunt damage, weirdly, in the Sky Dragon, because I suppose you're using your half to hit the enemy. Well, makes sense, but I'm not going to worry too much about that. The left click on the horse is likely to be piercing damage, and your normal attacks are going to be predominantly piercing damage. So for me, you should be speccing this class with piercing damage in mind, and any sort of slashing you get is a bonus. I guess we'll have to wait to really get this point clarified on the Green Dragon, but for me, I think that's piercing damage. It just doesn't quite add up, in my opinion. And we actually see a little bit, if we look over here, it says after using the ultimate skill on Wandering Dragon, it does piercing damage. And then when you go and look at the Wandering Dragon ultimate variation, it says it's slashing damage. So there's clearly some errors going on between the translation. So I think we can kind of assume that that's what it is. So how have I been getting on with the class against kind of other units? It's interesting. It has its moments. The ultimate is certainly where you want it to be. Once you get that ultimate sort of stabbed through, you follow up with the ultimate variation, and then just going with some normal attacks, it seems to work really quite well. But it's very reliant on getting those combos to come off nicely, and that is quite hard to do. I certainly sort of think I struggle with a lot of stuff to do in quite a quick period of time, a lot of combos to get your fingers on, and you're trying to control a unit at the same time. I find it quite a lot to deal with. As a medium armor as well, you're quite fragile, so you do get killed quite easily. The damage output is also quite low, and because you don't really have any super AoE stuff, I find that it can actually be quite hard sometimes to kill groups of units, even if you've dealt with the hero, because you're not really putting out huge chunks of damage, unless these enemy units are really sort of grouping up into a nice tight little group, and then you can do some of your charge stabs and actually hit almost all of them at once, in which case it seems to work a little bit better. But anyway, I think we should probably hop into a battle now. Let's see how we've been getting on. And yeah, let's just go through kind of a normal battle. We're not going to find any exceptional footage or do anything like try and make it look better than it is, because this weapon certainly has its issues. So let's just go into kind of a standard siege, and let's see kind of some of the benefits and then some of the problems I'm also having with the class. So we kick things off on Conqueror Castle, and of course, any excuse, and I've got my paladins out, but the enemy actually, just as they're getting their towers in, make a little bit of a push in the gateway. Just hanging on for this Imp Pike, trying to time it so that as the Imp Pike ends, my charge goes in. Unfortunately, there's a second wave of Imp Pike, so it didn't quite pan out. But we kind of get stuck in with my hero, and I'm just trying to layer out a little bit to try and get some of the damage. I think while it can do okay here, I find it struggles a bit on damage output. Part of that is probably because I'm used to playing Glaive, playing Poleaxe, where they've got sort of these big AoE damage hitters, and they build up quite a lot of damage versus units quite quickly. And whilst the pike in the right situation, if the enemies really group up, you can kind of spear charge, or you can use the slightly wider AoE ability to do a reasonable amount of AoE damage. The damage values tend not to be that high. You know, you're hitting a unit for 900, 1,000, maybe up to 1,500 if you're getting a critical with a normal ability. Whereas in a glaive, I might be hitting 2,500, 3,000, something like that if I criticaled someone in the back. So that kind of difference is what makes the class, in my opinion, quite hard to use effectively. That combined with the fact that when I use a normal attack or an ability, it carries you forwards. So you always end up not doing that much damage, but ending up surprisingly deep in enemy formations. Or at least, that's kind of been my experience of it so far. But anyway, we're carrying on. We started to try to make a little bit of a push up here. Not quite sure why that paladin charge didn't activate. I don't know if I screwed it up or if someone threw a bomb at me or what. Don't quite know why that didn't go off. But either way, it didn't. We get stuck into a little bit of a fight. It goes initially okay, but I'm actually being shot into the back by imp archers from the ground, shooting through that little breach they now get in the wall. And we start to take quite a few casualties, and I realise that this is probably an official bad idea. So we make a little bit of a back down, and I'm sort of regrouping the unit, sending them back to the supply point. And we're then in the situation where I've just got my hero now, and I kind of need to be assisting, but, you know, I'm only medium armour. And kind of what do you do in this sort of situation? My ultimate is obviously a charging through, so you've got to be really careful to not overextend. And as I said, most of the abilities carry you forwards. It's very easy to get yourself caught into a situation where you charge through with your ultimate, everything goes onto cooldown, and suddenly you're in the middle of enemy lines as a medium armor user, surrounded by enemies. And of course, you die remarkably quickly. I mean, look how quickly my health goes down there. I thought I was going to get away with it. Got clipped in the back. Damn it. And I get myself killed. But that can be one of the problems. I find it quite hard to sometimes apply the damage in the way that I want to. At least that's been my experience so far with the class. On the flip side, I do like the fact that ultimate actually cuts through enemy units, so you don't have to get right up to an enemy hero to realistically do damage. You can actually be quite a few meters back, build up your charge, because I perhaps didn't mention this earlier, but you actually have to charge the ultimate. The more you charge it, the more damage it's going to be doing. So by sitting back a little bit, you can charge your ultimate, wait for the enemy hero to come in range, and then unleash through a few enemy units and straight into the face of the enemy hero. And in that capacity, it can work really quite well. So we respawn, and actually B point is being really badly threatened. I go on my ultimate. I'm trying to deal with 3 heroes here. I'm also trying to keep myself alive and deal with the units I've got here, and trying to keep my javelins vaguely still alive. We managed to get a little bit of damage on and keep them going. I have to move them to the left to get them out of the way of those Imperial archers on the wall, because they're doing a tremendous amount of damage to me. We're getting some more shots in as friendly berserkers arrive, and we do enough to really basically kill off the remaining enemy units, along with those berserker support. I go for a heal, and I realise they're actually capping our back supply point here. So I cancel my heal. I want to try and stop this poleaxe. He's a bit slow to react. It gives me time to charge. We turn around, we do my ultimate variation, and then we can basically just get stuck in with normal attacks using my unit, and we can just sort of work him down. So as you can see, nothing does huge amounts of damage. That was a fully charged ultimate, and it still hits decently. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's by nothing to complain about, but you're building up damage through lots of individual hits, not really one ultimate all-powerful. You know, it's not a glaive. This is not like using Warlord's Greeting and getting that 20k critical hit. This is about stunning, getting the knockdown, following up with the ultimate variation, following up then with normal abilities, then getting back on your 3-second cooldown and start working through your abilities again. It's about applying that damage with lots of combos, with speed and aggression. And that's quite hard to do, in my opinion. I think that's one of the things I actually quite like about the class. I think we have a lot of classes that I guess are relatively easy to play. We won't name names, but I'm sure you can work it out. And something like this I think is quite hard to play, and yet there is potential there if you're good at it. I think the combos can work nicely. You can make better use of the CC. That's something I definitely struggle with. I tend to just use 3 of one combination because I struggle to realistically flick and change between the 3 different abilities. And so I think there's a lot to be learnt there, and I think that generally is a good thing. There's sort of a decent amount of stuff that you can pick up. And I think that's something that we need. A lot of us have been playing this game for a tremendously long time, and we don't need another hugely overpowered class. But something that's got potential but is hard to learn, I think, is actually kind of a good thing. But having said that, it can be very frustrating at times, this class. You know, the damage output isn't that high, and as a medium armour, you are intensely fragile. It is very easy to find yourself like 0 for 5, and, you know, really not having a very enjoyable game. Yeah, I realised I'd screwed up my Jav Sergeants there on the tactical map. That's why I just pressed 1 to get them to auto-javelin and put them into attack mode. I realised I wasn't going to be saving those guys. But I do need to actually get over to the B point. I just have a little bit of a check over here. As that Treb's going in, grab my horse, hop down, and I'm on my way to the B point. Because realistically, we've only got 2 minutes 30, so if we can stop them from capping the B point, we're going to be in quite a good position to actually be winning this fight. Now, admittedly, this doesn't look good. One of the benefits of this unit is that it has quite a nice little horse attack. I'm initially just using the left stab. I'm actually more focused on just keeping myself on the point and getting damage. The right click that you get with the pike, generally I'm not a huge fan of. It doesn't seem as nice as the right click AoE that you get on the glaive. I'm going to get myself out of the fight, go for the ultimate, go for my ultimate variation, cause a bit of knockdown, get myself killed, but ideally gave my best shot at trying to hold the B point there. And unfortunately we couldn't quite do it, but as more support turns up, we at least managed to get the kills on the enemies who did actually get the capture. So, yeah, you know, it's hard in that sort of situation. Would I have been better off with a poleaxe in that situation? Probably. As a heavy armour user, you'd have been a lot more tanky, and it'd have been a lot easier probably to survive. But some of the damage abilities you get on the horse, yeah, it's quite nice. But for me, I've been preferring the left click over the right click, because it just doesn't seem as good as the glaive's right click, in my opinion. So a few minutes pass where basically not a lot really happens, and then we're now fighting for the final base point. Got my Cudgel Monks out, which of course we'll have a proper video on, hopefully in a day or 2. Managed to grab a sneaky little hero kill, and then I just send them back to the supply point to get healed up. A little bit of a pointless ultimate there, and then I made a key mistake there, which people I've talked to also get a little bit confused about this. Because I've used my ultimate, all my normal abilities go into ultimate variation mode. So then when I pressed E to try and use my escape skill, it didn't work, because it went into like Hail of Blades mode. So that can be very easy to get yourself caught out by forgetting that your escape skill isn't an escape skill immediately after using your ultimate, because of course it goes into ultimate variation. So you do have to think ahead a little bit about what you want to do, because that can kind of, well, it can get you killed if you're not careful. Anyway, with the main push kind of defeated, we're kind of having a bit of a look at what's going on. And I noticed at the far back, there's a group of enemy archers, I think Imperial archers, shooting down onto the point. And I thought, well, we could go round, up onto the wall, and maybe try and flank them. You know, it might not pan out, depends if they protect them properly or not. But on the way there, we get a bow hero. And this is kind of the nice bit about the class, is the horse fighting. We can just keep stabbing him until his horse dies, get on him, knock him down, straight build up my variation, boom, and he's dead with the ultimate. So that was almost a full health bow hero taken down. You can get quite a bit of stun when you get things to chain, but that's the hard bit. Unfortunately, things don't go quite so well here. I thought I had a clear run on the stairs, go for the charge, but the Maul catches them in a line and manages to stop the entire unit. And then as I come down, I get full focused, not only by the Maul and the short sword, but also by a full stack of Imperial archers. And yeah, as a medium armour user, that went about as well as you would imagine. Got myself killed. But then we're basically stuck on cooldown, waiting for them to push the point again. So we just cut that bit out just to, well, avoid the boredom of watching me on cooldown for 60 seconds. We get this enemy with short sword trying to do a bit of a sneaky. Unfortunately, don't quite get him pinned down. Obviously, he gets stuck into iron sights, so it's very hard to kill, and alas, we don't quite get the kill. But that little left-click stab on a horse, I find it really quite nice sometimes. Particularly when you can basically keep pace. If you've got a purple horse, you know, it's got a fast galloping speed, you can basically keep pace with anyone and just continuously stab them, because it never uses any stamina on the left click, and it's actually quite a damaging ability and does it really rapidly. And that's how we were able to pin down that bow hero right earlier on. We were able to just keep up with his horse, He tried to escape, but we are faster than him. I can just keep next to him, stab, 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 until his horse is dead. And then he's on the floor, and he's a much easier target for us. So I'm just waiting for my paladins to get down the stairs, basically. Everything's kind of kicking off a little bit. I think this is going to be a tough fight. You know, they're kind of making their move on point now, and I'm trying to drive them out. I go for that poleaxe, and that's what I was talking about a little bit in the sense of, you know, you can target enemies who don't know you're coming. I was 6 or so meters from that poleaxe. He had no idea I was there until I basically burst through a unit and stabbed him in the chest. And then I followed up with the ultimate variation to secure the kill. Unfortunately, another poleaxe got me, locked me in place. And that's the real downside of being a medium armor. Quite fragile and quite easily get killed. And I do find that I'm finding myself getting killed quite a lot more than with a glaive. I don't really know why that is. I think it might be because there's not an easy CC with the class other than the ultimate. We don't have that Warlord's Greeting to, you know, double overhead hit and cause a stun like a glaive. We don't have the pushback like a poleaxe or anything like that. It means you can't easily CC the enemy heroes you're facing. And so therefore, I think you find yourself in a fairly difficult situation to sort of pin enemy heroes down and stop them from being able to CC you in turn. And that's kind of why I think I'm getting myself killed quite a lot. Unfortunately, we did eventually lose the match. And we hardly exactly had an exceptional game. We didn't do anything particularly great there, but equally, we had a few decent moments. And it kind of hopefully highlighted not only some of the positives, but also some of the negatives of the class. And I think, in summary, it's not an amazing class. I am going to keep playing it a bit longer. I want to see if I can kind of get the hang of it a bit more. I don't think it's groundbreaking. It's certainly not overpowered. But it does, in the right situation, have a few moments where you can kind of make use of it. And it is quite fun to just be playing a new hero weapon in the game. But anyway, would be really interested to hear your thoughts. So do let me know in the comments down below. And of course, subscribe to the channel for a lot more Conqueror's Blade content. Thanks for watching, guys. And I shall see you all on the next video.